So Lucy fans, today's video is of course the spoiler review for Lucifer, so if you want to get into all the big details, and I mean all the big details, my thoughts, my just general review on them, and predictions going off that cliffhanger into Lucifer Part 2 of Season 5, this video is for you. What is up, Lucy fans? Welcome to my spoiler review of Lucifer Season 5 Part 1. I have been itching to make this video. A lot of you have been commenting on my previous video saying, where's your Lucifer video? I've been putting out so much content on the channel recently, but also, you know, I wanted to give you guys a chance to actually binge the heck out of all 8 episodes, and I think, it's only been like 6-7 days, like a week? So I think this is decent timing, and this video is going to go on for a while because I've written down a lot of bullet points because there's a lot of things that have happened this season already, and we're only halfway through, so I'm going to be going over the main bits, reacting to it, speaking about it in detail, things that I thought were great, some other things that I think perhaps were maybe not so much, and of course where I think things can go in Part 2. Excuse the creased shirt, but yeah, like this video if you do go on to enjoy it, Lucy fans. I would really appreciate that. There may be a bunch of other videos that have gone up recently that you may very well be interested in, so check out the channel and subscribe for more Lucifer videos like this, and I'm talking updates on Season 6, and we're going to get into some Season 6 stuff in this video, new stuff as well from the showrunners. There's actually so much going on. I know this intro has dragged out a little bit. Kick back, relax, and let's get into all the details of Lucifer, because I really want to get into some of the explanations that they gave us for big plot points as well. So very briefly premising kind of what I said in my spoiler-free review, this season started off as a bit of a slow burner. Compared to Season 4, so did the whole season, but not remotely in a bad way. It's just that last season we only had 10 episodes, and you can tell that this season was written with a much longer arc in mind than compared to Season 4, which is true because we're getting 16 episodes, another 8 in just hopefully a few months' time, and I'll get into predictions about that once again towards the very end of this video. When I say slow burner, by the way, just to give more context to that, I think some people misconstrue it in a slightly bad way or whatever. Slow burner doesn't mean a bad thing. It just means that you're not diving head over heels right into the season. It's still like a quality show. You're still getting enjoyment out of it, but what I meant by that is we get to see Lucifer in hell in the first episode. I like the way they weave this story into that, and we got some more landscape of hell and some wicked stuff like that. As much as we still had Tom Ellis through Michael, we wanted to get to the Lucifer Chloe stuff, what it meant and what it would be like when he came back. So I do apologize if there's anything I do skip over, just because I feel like I've got enough to say about the following bullet points that I'm about to get into. I wasn't a mega huge fan of May's teaming up with Michael. However, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. Once again, it means that, you know, you love to hate something. I don't know, I'm of two minds about this at the same time. I do get it, and as much as I enjoyed Maze's arc this season with her wanting to be more like others, like human, if you will, and she's even tried fitting in the prior seasons. So it's been great seeing Maze become less out of touch with humanity, not only throughout the series, but this season. Less demon and more human, even without a soul. But as Lucifer said, with the whole motivation initially, you know, that Maze had, you could have just hopped on the back of Amenadiel and come down to hell. I feel like there's some lines like that they gave us this season where it's just like, well, that's kind of true. It's like what I would say in a review, but they're acknowledging it in the show. But I do want to counterbalance that, because I'm not saying I'm ripping into it. What I want to say is, I suppose the whole point is still her abandonment issues, which fueled a grudge for Lucifer, probably somebody she thought who wouldn't do that to her out of all people. Not that he intentionally did so, it kind of flew over Lucifer's head. Like, Lucifer really isn't, from what we've seen on the show, ever malicious. It's just sometimes, you know, how problems or issues flow over heads of people because they're not necessarily being considerate enough, or because they've got too much of their own shite going on. But I still can't help but feel like she could have just hopped on the back of Amenadiel. But then again, she might not have wanted to stubbornly because, you know, of her abandonment issue. We'll revisit some more Maze stuff a little bit later because there's a whole Lilith aspect to that, which is very interesting. I really wanted to talk to you guys about Lilith. So many of you were commenting in my spoiler review saying, what about Lilith? Is she in this season? And I'm like, well, yes, but no. But actually, yes. The Michael portion, I wanted to dive straight into Michael just because there is a lot to say. So I love how Michael really is the one in this iteration of just biblical divinity and celestial stuff who basically is the devil. That may not make sense to some of you, but you know, with the details that we get from Michael this season, he's more representative and embodies the character of the devil than Lucifer Morningstar himself. There's a lot going on with him this season, way more than what we even know as of ending part 1, and we get clues through that. For example, when he says he was in the Silver City doing his own thing, and then the motivation just kind of stemming initially from how Gabriel told him that Lucifer is back in hell voluntarily, which is when Raphael starts going off about how Lucifer has grown, what a sacrifice he's had in terms of going back to hell. Lucifer, 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 Lucifer. So, and continuing along that route, he's just pissed off that Lucifer finally does something he's supposed to do without whining and gets praised. He rebelled against Dad. Since when do we congratulate a convict for serving their sentence? All of this sacrifice and responsibility BS is all smoke and mirrors. Once he hears that someone is up there playing with his toys, maybe breaking a few, then he will come and reveal his true colors. Now, the reason why I wanted to reiterate those lines is because it's so obvious that Michael is so jealous of Lucifer. Michael, you know, traditionally, I'm not a biblical religious education expert or anything, but he's a good angel. He led God's army. He is just more favored than Lucifer, but in this iteration, you can low-key tell that is not the case, and as much as he would never admit that to anyone, he knows it deep, deep down, which is the whole motivation behind it, and I loved that premise this season. It was such a cool, brotherly, jealous, as I said in my spoiler-free review, celestial drama that was unfolding, and I loved it. And thank goodness that Chloe didn't sleep with Michael. Oh my god, that would have been very effed up. And I mean, could you imagine if they actually did that? In a way, I would have liked to have seen another timeline version of Season 5 if it wasn't announced that Season 6 was going to happen, that she actually did do that. That would have been almost too dark, but like, how would they come back from that? How would that have affected their relationship with Lucifer? That would have been so messed up. And they were going to go there. Michael was willing to be like, I'm going through with this. And that just shows how sinister this angel is meant to be. Now, going back to the big plan stuff, because I just realized I kind of ditched that sentence I began with. We do get a bit of a tease of that in one of the episodes where Amenadiel says that things have changed in heaven. Michael has managed to seat himself as Father's right hand. And Michael is actually the only one talking to Dad, and nobody else in the city has a line to God. Like, Michael is seen to it. He is the one whispering in his ears. Any Lord of the Rings fans out there, do you remember when Theoden was just completely made dumb by Saruman? It's that kind of thing. I know I'm getting into a bit of nerdy lore there. I can't remember the guy's name. You're seeing it on screen. That's how I imagine how God has become. Now, albeit we did see God at the end and he seemed almighty and divine, it does seem like he's been taken advantage of, and I'm so interested that this little plot line was set up, because if God was all there, why would he? Surely the all-knowing God would know what Michael has been doing, not letting anybody else get a line to God. So I really do feel like God is being taken a bit of a mug off by Michael, and it's kind of unbeknownst to him. Just going off the very sentence I read out from what Amenadiel said to Lucifer. Another thing I didn't expect, and I thought was such an interesting take. It still kind of hasn't absorbed in fully till today, like even right now, and that's when Michael revealed to Lucifer that all I did was plant the idea of the rebellion. Maybe it wasn't just the rebellion that was Michael's suggestion. What about the little sexcapade in the garden, or the vacation here to Earth? It was all quite easily, actually. All of our lives you thought you were better than me, the great Lucifer Morningstar, but you're not, are you? And I love this bit. You're just Samael, unworthy, and even though in biblical kind of lore I believe Samael is a different kind of celestial being, like they've adopted that to be Lucifer's angel name in this show, Samael is just a name that he doesn't want to associate with. That's his past. The whole lore of Lucifer, like that whole heaven period is like a big no-no to him. So when he says that he's unworthy, when he got cast out of heaven to hell, like the whole sincerity and sadness to the backstory of this iteration of the live action Lucifer, that hit home to him and he triggered him, and rubbing in the unworthy aspect. This guy's just so narcissistic. He's a sadist. He's so jealous of his brother. He wants to see this guy hurt and he will get satisfaction out of it, just all because of jealousy. And to me, that's a very interesting story. I think that they really did knock it out the park with that plot point, that kind of main plot point, and Michael's motivation this season, the whole cards being even revealed in that episode. That's such a mind-blowing aspect as well. It's kind of needless to say, but I do feel the need to just mention it anyway, that the devil, Lucifer, while we can't put all the blame on Michael, because at the end of the day, Lucifer did follow out the actions, the fact that the seed, every seed in every cliche story of the biblical sense of what the devil did, Adam and Eve, the garden, the idea of the rebellion, all of those ideas were given to Lucifer from Michael. And you know what I think, in the most ironic way, I reckon Lucifer listened to his brother Michael, let's say when he was whispering in his ears about rebelling against dad or whatever, because even though Michael perceives Lucifer to be acting better than him all of his life, I reckon from Lucifer's perspective as they were growing up, or when they were existing back in the dawn of time, Lucifer probably looked up to Michael, and that's why he took his advice on board. But he probably kept seeing that Lucifer kept getting favor from dear old dad, and he couldn't stand that, so he took advantage of Lucifer admiring and looking up to his brother as a role model, and literally caused every single thing, indirectly stemming all the main devil plot points, and that was the fall from grace that Lucifer had. And it was all down to this little bastard of a brother. Now, there's so many things I could dive into here, but I've got so much other stuff to cover in the video. I wonder if God is aware of this. I mean, you know, I think there's going to be some nerfing here of God, like he's going to be slightly depowered in the show because he's meant to be all-knowing, so surely he should just know absolutely everything. With that logic, it's confusing, really, because that could take a lot of things away from the show at the same time. But maybe it might get revealed to God that Lucifer, even though he carried out those actions himself, maybe it will get revealed that the whole seeds in a deceiving and manipulative way were planted by Michael. And man, either way, I think the performance of Tom Ellis was absolutely stellar. But let's get on to the detective, Chloe Decker. Now, Chloe this season was, of course, interesting. A lot of us were just waiting for the reunion scene, but they also added in the whole plot point of the fact that, you know, now they're together. Why are they together? Because of the whole gift from God aspect being revisited again from the earlier seasons, where Lucifer had already confronted that aspect, but now it got explored in a much more in-depth way. And you couldn't really argue with it as well, because you completely understood where Chloe was coming from, and that's quite a smart thing, because you could just be like, oh no, but Chloe, who cares? Be with Lucifer for your love. But then you understand, imagine walking a mile in her shoes. You love this person, but imagine if your whole soul and existence is to be a present under a Christmas tree for someone else. You must think everything is predestined, and what kind of life is that to live? However, I think they really stole a lot of our hearts with the reason they gave of what Amenadiel revealed to Chloe, which finally allowed them to actually embrace each other, so to speak. Oh, and by the way, amongst that reveal, I love when Chloe was just like, does that mean you're my dad, Amenadiel? But just to reiterate again from what Amenadiel said, he said, men and women are drawn to Lucifer because he pulls out their desires. But what if the reason they are drawn to him is because of that? Like Lucifer reflects people's desires back to them. Who wouldn't want to be with their greatest desire? Which makes sense. Like every other human loves Lucifer, is infatuated with him because of that aspect that he draws out of them with his ability. Strip that away, which Chloe is immune to, just by default compared to every other human in the whole freaking world, and that means that she's the only mortal who sees him for who he truly is. So literally everything they've shared, everything she was afraid of, is actually as real as it gets. There's no other human on Earth that could have any genuine and real relationship like Chloe has with Lucifer, because that is the gift. That is the gift to Lucifer, somebody being born and you know, being alive who sees him for who he truly is. And that was such a nice poetic way to transform that whole you know, relationship, especially, you know, revisiting it from way back when, from when Mum told Lucifer all about it. So I love this. To a hardcore Lucy fan, not to get too cringe, but you know, for those of us who just, well, it's the whole show, so I think it's all of us who wouldn't root for Chloe and Lucifer. That just hit the nail on the head and kept hammering in. Now, what about episode 4, the noir episode? I really enjoyed that. I don't see how you couldn't in any capacity, but I think a lot of fans were imagining they'd do more with the character of Lilith, the mother of all demons. However, we have to counterbalance as to why they necessarily didn't. So the reason they may not have, really capitalized upon Lilith, like I think a lot of people really wanted or imagined more than just a flashback episode of Lilith, is that they still gave her a very nice story entwined with May. Because we can't forget, this season was literally written in every episode to be the last season. Definitively the last season. Like, they were going out. So when you've got so much to wrap up, introducing her is like a whole season arc, really, if you think about it, similar to that of when Eve was introduced. If you were to introduce Lilith, it would be like for the whole season. However, since you can't do that, or at least to their knowledge at the time, without getting a season 6, you still want to do a little bit of fan service too. Like, if you're wrapping up the season 5's the last, well, it's like, oh man, but we have to find a way of incorporating Lilith somehow. So the way they did that was quite creative, in my opinion. They had this cool idea of still incorporating her from a flashback into Lucifer's past, and still linking her to Maze's plot this season with the whole abandonment issues. Also, I do want to mention, it's interesting that she kind of blew on the ring that, like, she gave to Lucifer, and then it turned black. I'm wondering if this will somehow contribute to Maze getting a soul. I mean, it definitely wasn't for some pointless cool aesthetic being added to the ring, at least in my opinion. You could argue that's looking too into it, and it is just symbolic of her giving up her immortality, and her immortality would come out into the symbolic way of, I don't know, black, of being the mother of all demons. But I don't know, it would just be cool if that ring was like the key to somehow Maze getting her soul. But hey, let's just wait till this part 2, I guess. Now, when Maze did see Lilith in present day, her mother, obviously she was older, that was kind of nice to see. It would have been nice to have seen a reunion, like, oh, how have you been, blah, 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 but that was the whole point. It was meant to fuel Maze's whole abandonment issues. Now, one of the issues I had, and I said this in my spoiler-free review, but I also did say, and I did stress, that this could be spoke about in part 2. Now, Amenadiel is back from hell in episode 5, and he says, Dad, God himself, spoke to Amenadiel in hell and said that hell no longer needs a warden, and I just felt like Lucifer in that moment. His line was literally like, let me just get this straight, I spent millennia down there doing what he asked, and you have one sleepover in hell, and your watch is over. Exactly. Now, my issues with this is that I know you could implement into it that because of this current thing going on in the season, God is meant to be all-knowing or whatever, but this is where contradictions can happen if you want to get a bit nitpicky. You could say that God wants to give Lucifer some of a chance because he sees what Michael was doing, but he doesn't want to interfere too much because he's God. However, then why go to hell in the first place? Like, at the end of last season? I mean, you could have done it at the end of last season, God. So Lucifer, as in his own words, didn't have to spend thousands of years waiting for his reunion with the detective if God was only going to just let him go up anyway, and hell no longer needing a warden. Like, the whole point of the end of season 4 was about the whole demons raining hellfire on Earth if he doesn't go down there. Oh, now all of a sudden God's like, by the way, demons, I'll just smite you if you kick up a fuss. You no longer need a boss. You know what you're doing. It just feels a bit undermining of the plot point. Now, once again, final time to reiterate this, you could say God wants to help Lucifer out, but then you can also immediately counterattack that through just saying, then why didn't God do that at the end of last season? You see my issue with that? Could be explored, though, in part 2 of season 5. It was really fun with Lucifer and Chloe, the whole episode of the swapping powers thing. That was great. But then this kind of entwines with the whole thing that was going on with Dan, and this is what I meant in my spoiler-free review with his performance. It was great, and the whole blend of shows like Lucifer with some of my other favorite shows, blending in such comedy, but with the sincerity of being able to pluck at our heartstrings. Dan is such a meme, but that scene when he tears up and he's by Charlotte's grave, when he's saying how reassured he is that she's in heaven because he's seen Lucifer, and this is when he's freaking out, and talking about that messing him up, it was just like, wow, I really enjoyed that. But Michael was completely manipulating him. Obviously, as a human fresh to this, you completely understand the motivations of Dan. You would almost be the same. So he goes to Lux to shoot Lucifer. He feels very conflicted. Imagine how worried you'd be for your daughter and like your ex-wife. There's some other hilarious tidbits that I could talk about forever, and how passed out on the flight back with Michael. So he was literally like Yoda on the back of Luke Skywalker flying through the air, which I would have I need a deleted scene of that, please. But anyway, here we are kind of revisiting Michael again, because this is when he capitalizes on what he already has been this whole season with fear when Chloe was kidnapped. So he says that you've been wondering about the changes my brother has been going through. Michael keeps rubbing it in and saying how we angels, we self-actualize, teases how he hasn't said he loves you and the devil doesn't lie and all of that stuff. So this kind of really worries Chloe. And she brings this up to Lucifer in a very kind of middle standpoint way, completely fair enough to her, because she's like, subconsciously maybe, Lucifer, you might be pushing me away. He says that he does, of course he does, but when it comes to uttering the words like he can't spit it out. Now, this doesn't mean that Lucifer doesn't love her or that he's losing his feelings for her. It means that he does, but now he's literally in love with her, as the showrunners teased recently. How can you love someone properly if you don't really kind of properly love yourself? I mean, think about it, like Angel self-actualized. The only reason why Lucifer looks like the devil is for his own self-loathing reasons. So it's not that he doesn't love Chloe, it's just that he can't lock into that right now because he's got enough self-hatred going on that I think it's so intimidating for him to actually dive that far into it that it's just not a thing. So you can kind of see where Lucifer will hopefully end up towards the end of the series with this self-actualized pure version of himself, self-loving, but not in like an egotistical way, but you know what I mean. And now at this point, I want to talk about time freezing, Maze, and God appearing, that cliffhanger. So, first of all, I do want to say very quickly, when Maze is like, he promised me a soul, and that's why she was standing alongside Michael, she must have really believed that, because otherwise, I feel like this character's been written to be kind of taken as a mug, but once again, to kind of counterbalance this, I suppose Maze, at a lot of times across the series, has been taken as like a grown woman, don't get me wrong, or a grown demon, or whatever you want to say, but her mental maturity is often, or like human emotional empathy and understanding and the way humans work has been that of like a toddler at times. So I feel like Maze can be manipulated very easily, not to mention that stacked on top of her abandonment issues. I don't know, it just felt like, really, you're gonna try and kill Lucifer with your demon blades because he caught it. Once upon a time, I believe that was explained that it doesn't harm angels, and then it kind of soft key retconned it and how that can destroy an angel. So the fact that she's willing to go ahead and destroy Lucifer, it does feel a little bit far-fetched for me, but there is motivation there. It just depends whether you're ready to kind of really invest in if she would do that or not. And I guess she's willing to do anything to get a soul, so make your own mind up about that. I'm just a bit indifferent to it. So God appears and he's like, children, you know I hate it when you fight. I do think there is going to be a bit of discussions. I think Amenadiel and Lucifer are going to go to the Silver City, but now you've introduced God, and I remember the showrunners commenting, just saying, at the beginning we said they were never going to do this, never going to do that, never going to get to God, but they've got there. And I guess it's just about figuring things up along the way, and that just brings me to the whole Season 6 news, by the way. At first, their reaction was like, no, we're not doing that. Just no, because that's when they were offered a Season 6, and they were like, whoa, no, we can't do that. We said it's ending here, and that's the way it's ending, but then they figured out a creative way that will be fun, narratively speaking, and in a writing perspective that will carry on in Season 6. So that's reassuring to know. I've always been worried that they're going to milk it since Season 5's ending was meant to be definitive. I'm still apprehensive there, to be honest, but I really hope that it isn't an ending and then just like they continue it in like this epilogue sense. It was really cool seeing God. It was such a great cliffhanger. I kind of felt like that was coming because I was waiting for God this whole time. I think with the whole Celestial family drama, there's a lot to look forward to. I am very intrigued if something's going to happen to God or something or another, given the whole context and the lines that I read out and reiterated of what Michael said, or Amenadiel said about Michael, and how he's, you know, kind of been whispering in God's ear the whole time and not let anyone else get to him. Maybe there's going to be some kind of conquest in heaven, this struggle for control. I do believe, as I keep saying, I do believe that Lucifer and Amenadiel will go to the Silver City. We are going to see it, in my opinion, and that's going to be just amazing. I can't wait to see what heaven looks like. Maybe there won't be any power struggle, but it'll just be like a family intervention, because how can you really power struggle with God himself? But Michael, man, as I said, he's really the embodiment of the devil in this universe with his treacherous ways. He used Amenadiel's kid as a pawn. But without blabbering too much longer, I was very happy with the way Season 5 Part 1 ended. There are other things that I wish I would have got into a bit further, like Ella's boyfriend. I guess just cliff notes there. Interesting story. I knew something was off from him at the very beginning. Charlie being human, interesting. I feel like if this season would have gone on for multiple years, he would still be human, but up until a certain age, I feel like he would have self-manifested these celestial abilities. It just would have taken coming of age at a certain point. But man, this video has been going on way long enough. I know I just wanted to nerd out and blabber about Lucifer. So for those of you who made it to this point in the video, I really do appreciate that. And I'm sure those of you who made it to this point in the video will leave me some fat paragraphs or something down in the comments below about what you think could be happening next season, your reactions to certain parts and explanations. Maybe expand upon some of my own theories about some of the things that happened this season. My initial predictions is that they release part 2 maybe just like mid to late October or maybe early November. It could be as late as December. I really hope it's not like a, I don't know if any of you watch Vikings, but when they split the seasons up, you don't see it again for months. And when I say months, I mean months and 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 months. Don't do that. People do lose interest. It doesn't add hype to the show, dragging it out on a 7-month delay. So, January wouldn't be the worst thing. It could happen, but I'm hoping for the end of this year, or like towards the end. And of course, I'll be doing my early spoiler-free review a few days before it releases when the embargo lifts. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, please share it with all of your Lucy fans out there. Just kind of use this video as this kind of collaborative nerd out for Lucifer, if you will. Check out my social medias. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's just @BobaTalks/BobaTalks. Very, very easy to find. Check out some of my other videos recently that I've loaded, but that is absolutely everything. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Lucy fans in the next video. Goodbye.